I'm Barry Banther, author of A Leader's Gift, How to Earn the Right to be Followed. The gift of listening requires each one of us as a leader to make a choice, to choose to be open and invest the time, and now to listen to what's being said to us. And it may be that one gift that allows us to learn information that otherwise we wouldn't find. It only took 73 seconds for the Space Shuttle Challenger to explode. 7 brave Americans lost their life. Within days, President Reagan established the Rogers Commission to try to get to the bottom of what happened. But the problem wasn't at the bottom, the problem was at the top. And over the next many months, they would discover that it was a lack of listening that led to not hearing the kind of information that could have precluded this national tragedy from occurring. Brenda Barnes is the former head of PepsiCo and Sara Lee. She said bad leaders create a context. They create an atmosphere at work where they only are told or they only hear what they want to hear. That's dangerous. And that's why the gift of listening is so important. When you create a reputation that you're someone who listens, then the person that you're listening to, that employee that works for you, or that colleague that you work with, when they get the notion that they're really being heard, it's a powerful connector to building a team. In A Leader's Gift and at aleadersgift.com, we share 5 steps that it takes to be able to do this. And we give you much more in-depth material there on how to do it. But let's look at them briefly. The first one is to stop, drop, and listen. Whatever you're doing, you just have to stop. At the time that I learned this, I was actually teaching in college, and I would come home from school with all these papers in my arms I pretended to grade, and I'd walk in and my young sons would run up and daddy, 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 and I would say, wait guys, let me change clothes, let me get a drink. And where do you think they were by the time I did all that? They were gone. And my wife encouraged me. She said, look, our older son had learned something called stop, drop, and roll. Do you remember that? She said, Barry, when you walk in the door, just stop, drop everything, and listen to them. So the next day, and I will admit, somewhat for spite, I walked in the door, they came running up, I dropped everything, went to my knees and looked at these 2 little boys, and to my amazement, it only took a few seconds, maybe a minute for them to share what they wanted to share. So you have to stop, drop what you're doing, and pay attention. Listen to the person that's speaking to you. That's how you begin to create the atmosphere where they feel as though they're being heard. So the first thing I want you to do is stop, drop, and listen. Then the second thing is to suspend judgment. You're going to be tempted to make up your mind, to make a decision, a conclusion very quickly about what this associate's telling you. I think it's important to become a lasting leader. You've got to create an environment where an associate can tell you anything and you're not going to lose your self-confidence, your self-control, or your self-esteem. You've got to suspend judgment. And then I want you to search a little bit deeper. Don't take the first answer someone gives you. When you ask an associate about something and they give you the answer, don't tell them what you think, but instead ask another question. Ask the question like, well, how do you mean that? Why do you think that's important to our company? And in A Leader's Gift, I show you why the answers to those questions are so important with information you need to know from the perspective of the people that you're leading. So you stop, drop, and you listen. You suspend your judgment, you search deeper, and then I want you to seek misunderstanding. George Bernard Shaw said the only thing that's absolute when communication occurs is that there will be miscommunication. I want you to go ahead and make this assumption, that there could well be miscommunication when you're talking to that colleague or to that person that reports to you. And so at some point in the conversation, I want you to stop and say, I want to make sure I don't misunderstand this. Is this what you're saying? Is this what we're agreeing to do? Because if you don't do that, the misunderstanding will come up later as a missed deadline, or even something more tragic like the Challenger example. So you want to stop, drop, and listen. You want to suspend judgment. You want to be willing to search a little deeper. You want to seek misunderstanding. And then finally, you want to show appreciation. You want the person to truly believe and for it to be genuine that you value their input, whatever that input is. And so you've got to show them appreciation for taking their time to share with you and answer your questions. Do you see what happens when you create this kind of atmosphere as a listener? You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to work the most hours. You're a leader who's bringing out the best in others, and collectively, they're doing collectively what you could never do on your own. And it never pays to stop listening. In fact, you may have been a leader for many years and think, oh yes, I listened when I was younger. I want to challenge you to keep listening. I'm a great fan of golf, and I grew up in the era of Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. And over a decade ago, I got to see Arnold Palmer play in a seniors tournament. He was already over 70 years of age. Thousands of people showed up to watch him play, and it was a bit painful. He didn't play that great that day, but when he would make a shot or get close, we would all roar, and it would sound like a Sunday afternoon in Augusta. So finally the round's over with, and I thought, I'll never forget this day. I'm headed back to my car, and I'm passing the practice tee, and I hear something, and I look over, and there's Arnold Palmer. He's practicing, he's hitting a bucket of balls, and he's got a young coach, I suppose, who was helping him, and he would say, Mr. Palmer, move your foot this way, or get your hips into it this way. I stood there and I asked myself this question: why is he doing this? He's worth $1 gazillion. We really don't care how well he plays. And then I realized that's why he's Arnold Palmer and I'm not. Even now, he's still listening to get better. He was listening to someone else to improve. Are you willing to do that? If you are, then you're well on your way to becoming a lasting leader.